My name is Katie, and you might say that I'm addicted to extreme activities. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, in my teens, the one position that I seemed to excel at the most was the bench. However, I signed up for a running class, and 2 or 3 times a week I would run, each week adding a few miles more. That's when I considered running a marathon. Up until that point, I told myself that running marathons was for those people, and I wasn't one of those people. I wasn't tough enough or strong enough, and the excuses went on until one day I decided to give it a try. It was during this 26.2-mile run that I saw all walks of life. There were young runners and old, thick and thin, and it made me realize that these endurance challenges, well, they're available to everyone, and it's truly a matter of mind rather than muscles. So with that first endurance challenge, I became curious to know what else I might be able to do. At 19, I signed up for the Big Ride Across America. It was a 3,300-mile bike ride from one side of the country to the next, something I thought would be impossible. At the time that I signed up for that journey, I didn't even own a bicycle, but I was determined to do it, and so I did. At 21, I became the first and only person to swim the entire length of the Allegheny River. So it was a 325-mile swim where I swam 12 to 15 miles a day. My longest swim was 22 miles, and it took me about a month to finish that adventure. Finally, I decided to run solo and unsupported across 2 deserts. Each challenge, I was hungry for more. Now, rowing across the Atlantic was an idea that found me when I least expected it. And yes, I'm saying rowing, no motor, no sail, rowing. So I was sitting on a bus, chatting to the person sitting next to me, and he had mentioned that his friend had rowed a boat across the Atlantic. I was intrigued, then I was obsessed. I wanted to know everything I possibly could about ocean rowing. I wanted to know what boats they used, what equipment was used, who else had done this. But most importantly, I wanted to know if I could do it too. I had my doubts that I'd be able to do it, but if there's anything that I'd learned from my previous challenges, it's this. We are each capable of whatever we set our minds to. Passion is a powerful thing, and determination, it can change everything. I knew I had to do this row. When I decided that I wanted to row across the Atlantic, I was missing a few things. I didn't have oars, sponsors, a boat, a plan. To be completely honest, I didn't even know how to row a boat. Minor detail, right? So I spent 2 years preparing for that challenge, learning everything I needed to know to live at sea for months. Everyone was nervous. My friends were nervous. My family was nervous. And I did have kids all across the states that would write to me expressing some of their concerns. So 1 month before I set off, I got a letter from an 8-year-old named Justin who wrote, "Hello, Katie. I think your quest to row across the Atlantic has gone too far. You know, you could run into sharks and stuff. Besides, what gave you the idea to row a boat anyway? Why by yourself also? If I were you, I would at least go with someone else, so if your boat sunk, someone would get eaten first." That's why you shouldn't row alone. Sincerely, Justin. So yeah, my 8-year-old friend does bring up a pretty good point, but I couldn't convince anyone else to go with me, so yeah, let's just fast forward to January of 2010, and I'm saying my final farewells to my friends and family, wondering if that would be the last time I'd see them again. And I fly myself over to Africa. Suddenly, my neighbor is a goat, electricity is going out on a daily basis, and everyone is speaking French. I'm ready to go on my super big adventure, but there's some storms on the Atlantic, so my boat's arrival was delayed and delayed and delayed some more. But finally, I'm taking those first few oar strokes of the million it would take to cross. On my 19-foot boat, I had 2 sets of oars, 4 iPods, 300 chocolate bars, and a lot of determination. But having said that, I was rowing in an ocean of unknowns. Half of the people who have attempted this challenge didn't make it, and the last American woman to try needed to be rescued. She was an Olympic rower. Yeah. I knew the odds were against me, but I was as ready as I'd ever be. So in this photo, you'll see that yellow speck on the horizon is my 19-foot rowboat. There's no helicopter flying overhead. There's no boat following right behind. For those 70 days, I was completely alone. Or so I thought. On day 2, I start to feel like the small fish in a big pond. Some of my most frightening moments on this journey were these close calls with oncoming freighters, which would be 100 times bigger than my boat, move 10 times faster, and with an emergency stopping distance of 2 miles, even 1 mile away was too close for comfort. On day 20, I have some visitors. So I was reaching the 4th way mark on my journey, and as I mentioned, half of the people don't make it. It's usually in the first couple weeks to adjust being at sea. I knew that this was a really big milestone, so I wanted to do something special to celebrate it. I wasn't sure what I could do, but the decision was made for me when I started to see these fins appear, and quickly realized I had 10 or 15 dolphins surrounding my boat, close enough for me to touch. They were doing all sorts of flips and tricks, and it felt like they were celebrating with me mid-ocean. By day 37, I reached halfway. So day 1 looked like 2, day 2 looked like 3, day 3. Every day pretty much looked the same. So when I reached the halfway point, instead of being excited, I was completely overwhelmed. I wanted to quit. I had already rowed 1,500 miles, and yet I still had 1,500 more to go. So I told myself, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to row 3,000 miles. What I'll do is row 1 mile 3,000 times. And it's really that perspective of taking things one step at a time that makes this achievable. All right, we're getting oh so close. On day 62, I am 100 miles away from reaching land. So that means I could be in a dry bed and have a warm shower in 2 or 3 days. But instead, I'm battling 30-foot waves. I'm rowing in a part of the ocean near the continental shelf. So it's a part of the ocean that jumps from being 6,000 feet deep to only 600. Waves just seem to be spiking out of nowhere, and with a strong wind and swift current, I can no longer trust the sea. I realize at this point that if I continue on towards my original destination, I'm going to need a boat to tow me in. Otherwise, I'd be crashing into cliffs. Now, when I decided to do this journey, I envisioned doing it completely unassisted, under my own steam. I didn't want that boat to tow me in on the final few miles. So I make this bold decision, adding on 400 more miles to my journey, rowing 2 countries west where the current had died down, and that would give me a better chance to arrive unassisted. That decision could have added 2 more weeks to my journey. Luckily, it only adds 8 more days, and by day 70, I reached land. Now, reaching land was the most surreal experience I have ever had. I felt like I was winning an Emmy, completing a marathon, and being released out of solitary confinement all at once. After 2 years of planning and 70 days on that 19-foot boat, my dream had become a reality, and I'd become the youngest person ever to row an ocean solo. So with one night, I went from complete solitude to being in front of millions. I talked to Anderson Cooper, Diane Sawyer, NPR, Discovery Channel, among others. I even met Oprah and was selected as Glamour magazine's Woman of the Year, and meeting people like Julia Roberts and Jennifer Lopez, and it was completely over the top. But they all kept asking the same question: why? And I told them, because 1 billion people on our planet don't have clean water to drink. And someone had to do something. I felt like I had to do something. You see, these adventures were much bigger than world records or personal achievements. Each of these adventures was about water. I'll never forget that moment, that turning point, when I was sitting in class and my professor mentioned to me that the wars of the future will be on water. It was like someone told me the wars of the future would be on air. I didn't understand, but I learned that over 1 billion people on our planet didn't have something they needed. Now, I know it's hard to imagine what 1 billion people look like, so perhaps 1 in 6 might be easier. 1 in 6 people didn't have something that I've always taken for granted, something I've never gone without: clean water. So these 1 billion people, they get their water from awful places, and it makes them sick, from ponds, muddy rivers, dry riverbeds, sometimes from puddles in the ground. Millions of kids and their moms are walking each and every day just to get this dirty water. I was astounded by everything I was learning. I learned that half of all schools around the world don't have clean water to drink. If I was born somewhere like Kenya or India or Malawi, that would mean I'd have to walk 4 miles every single day just to get water. And I'd have to be very patient because that line could be 8 hours long. Finally, I thought I was so big and tough and strong for doing all my endurance challenges, but I should have been doing what they do. As I mentioned, they make that 4-mile trek every day, but on the way back, they're carrying these jerry cans, these water containers that can easily weigh 40 pounds. So after learning all those facts, I learned that there were ways to help. There were solutions like digging and drilling wells, catching the rainwater, and protecting mountain springs. And a $30 donation was enough to help one person gain access to clean water for life. So out of that, my Row for Water was born. It was an idea for me to combine both my passion for better water and my passion for endurance, and to do something about it. And as a result, over $250,000 has been raised, so kids and their moms no longer needed to walk hour after hour each day for dirty water. Now, thank you. Thank you. I'm here not to convince you that water is the most important cause or convince you to row across an ocean. But the truth is, we all have something out there that we think is impossible or out of reach. And I'm here to tell you that we are capable of more than we think. Think about your out-of-reach goal and realize that it is possible if you just take one step after the other. You might not think you could run a marathon, but get out there and run a mile. You might want to travel the world. Well, get out there and explore your own backyard. You might feel stuck in a job. Just get out there and take an interview or take a class. Whatever it is, just take that next step. Thank you.